This is Now We're Here. I'm Damon Lester, and today I'm speaking with Camilo Alfaro, founder and CEO of autoproyecto.com. What's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, Damon. Great to see you again.
Man, it's so good to see you. I just saw you about a month ago at the NAMED conference, and it's a blessing for you to finally meet you, and the coverage that you provided us at the conference has been awesome. So we really appreciate that.
What an amazing, amazing organization. And I've been trying to make it out there for the last couple of years. And it just hasn't been able to coordinate it. But this time, I made sure to pencil it into the calendar. Obviously with, how things are, nothing's easy, right?
Right.
But we made it down there. And I was just so shocked to see this organization that is, doing the best it can, to bring in and show the importance of, diversity and these diverse owners, especially, at a dealer level, which I think is so important right now in the way things are today.
Man, I appreciate to hear that. And for a first timer, hopefully you got the feeling like you were at home or at a family reunion. And so that's the kind of vibe that we really try to present to everyone that comes, whether you're a repeat attender or your first time. And so I'm glad that's awesome that you were able to experience that and felt that. So that's good. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I felt it immediately, and so I was so excited. And the thing is that as we all know, minority dealerships and minorities, which as Mark Bland was talking about, and U.S. Census is going to be the new majority, right? And I think he was saying something that Black owners sell 2x more to Black consumers of at the car dealers, and that Hispanics sell actually 3 times more. So it makes sense to have that, and so it's really. I thought it was just so important to be able to bring all this information out. Right here at Autoproyecto, we talk a lot about the importance of the Hispanic market and diversity markets as a whole as well, because now.
So I applaud you, Camilo, because now we're going to go back. Let's go back a little bit because we're going to segue right into the conference. So we're going to start off about you. Tell me about your background. Where I know your educational background, but you can let folks know, how did you get started?
Yes, of course. So, well, I'm from Panama. So I'm born in Panama, and I grew up in Chicago, and I went to school at Michigan State University. And I went to school at Michigan State because they have an amazing advertising program. And they also have an amazing editorial program, and I also was able to take Spanish there as well. So I went to school at Michigan State, and then when I came out of school, I basically went to go work as an automotive editor at La Raza newspaper in Chicago. And when I was at La Raza newspaper, I was an automotive editor, and I was in charge of sales. And basically what I had to do was go out to the dealerships and explain to them why they should advertise in La Raza newspaper.
So at NAMED, we had a good friend, Raul Yesagere, who is from the National Council of the Raza. Is that the same?
No, this is actually that I know what you're talking about. The Council of Raza. This is actually the newspaper, the specific, the print newspaper in Chicago.
Okay, all right, man, that's cool. That's cool. So you worked there. You went to Michigan State. Your favorite Italian beef place?
At Michigan State or in Chicago?
Chicago.
Right. I think there used to be this little Vienna stand right in the middle, because I grew up in Winnetka. There was this little Vienna stand that had the best and the hot dogs and all that stuff, which was just amazing. But going back to when I went to the dealer said to me, "Why should I advertise here if you guys don't have anything that talks about cars?" So I put 1 and 2 together. And I said, okay, I'm going to start writing about cars. And I'm a huge car fan. So basically I started, and that was a real big problem back then, because I was kind of saying church and state, right? You can't be in sales and you can't be writing about, vehicles. And one of the great things was that I remember this lady that worked in public relations for Jaguar. She actually lent me a vehicle, and it was unheard of, because back then the way Hispanics were looked upon was poor gardeners, they don't have money to buy a vehicle, or they're just scrambling, and that was the perception of Hispanics back pre-census, right? Then the census came out, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I got to start advertising to Hispanics, right? Because they're going to be they're going to be so many percentage of the population." It was like 17 or 18%. So
Yeah.
that's how I got started, and then after that, I went to the Sun Times News Group, and I was their automotive editor for the Sun Times News Group, specifically the Pioneer Press, and I took care of all of the publications under the Sun Times News Group. Then I moved to LA to be their automotive editor for Impremedia, and I took care of all of their newspapers, all their editorial sections for automotive, and including La Raza and La Opinión in LA and all of those. But it was an amazing run. Then the economic downturn of '08 came, and I got let go. But they said to me, "Well, we want to keep you around. Why don't you provide content for us in a way that we can purchase the content? You don't have to go. We're going to get you as a vendor." And I said, "Perfect." And that's where I saw this opportunity to create Autoproyecto, and then we became the largest Spanish language content provider in the U.S. to Univision, Telemundo, Yahoo. Also, there was this other site that we used to, Terra. Terra was a
Okay.
huge, website, as you know. And so we provided all that content, automotive content, to all these publications. Until one day, I was at a presentation, because I would go and pitch these huge companies. I would say, "Okay, how you need to have an auto section, because you're going to get this advertising, and you're going to have all these views." And as I'm presenting this, talking about the content that we create, and everything that we do, as I'm presenting this, I realize, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm giving you the entire marketing playbook on how to, have your ROI, and have make a successful business. And that's when I started Auto Proyecto.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm gonna take you back to, you said something key for me was, prior to the census, Hispanic community weren't monitored, they weren't tracked, they were, even understand, there was this perception of that race, that they didn't have either the income, or didn't have, were worthy of being buyers or consumers. How does that how did that make you feel back then, when you knew that this is a key incubator of economy, who a group of folks, they provide no different than any other minority or non-minority, and it took for the census to have that track for it
Mm-hmm.
to pop, right? So as an editor, how did you pivot that opportunity, because it was a huge opportunity, and you got that one shot of window, and you jumped in it. How did you marry that this is something I need to make sure that my culture has representation?
Well, that's an excellent question. So, well, when I go in, there wasn't, and first of all, there wasn't any automotive in language content back then, right? So we were, in essence, almost pioneering the way, um, especially for newspapers. And we actually won the award for best auto section in a small newspaper, um, in language, by the National Association of Hispanic Publishers. Now, it was very challenging, because there wasn't data like there is today, right? There wasn't. We don't have. I didn't have the S&P mobility numbers of vehicle registrations and breakdown into the demographics of. There wasn't any of that, right? So the only piece of paper that we really had was the census, right? And you had to say, okay, if you have this information, this is why this is advertising towards Hispanics, or being part, engaging with them, was important. But it was very challenging, Damon. I mean, there was a lot of racism, especially back in those days. A lot of misunderstanding. I mean, even to this day, it still almost in a way continues that way. But I'm not going to go into that
Right.
subject, right? But it's been very, very, very challenging. Back then, with the lack of data, and almost today, I still, even now that we have all this data, it's still challenging,
Yeah. And
right?
we see it on the auto side as well.
Oh yeah.
We see it with that our footprint, the buying power you started off earlier with, the buying power of the minority community or consumer
Mhm.
is well over 40%.
Yeah.
And however our ability to be as the owners or entrepreneurs in this industry is only about 7%. And so the access and opportunity, we've been able to get to the table late, right? A lot of it because of civil rights movements and racism and things of that nature. But the access and opportunity, to your point, once you got in and you had that opportunity, you were able to succeed. And then we see the same thing on the dealer side that we typically, to Mark Bland's point during the conference, we coin it the future majority. And that's exactly what it is, because what we're finding is one, data don't lie, and the data shows that our segments collectively and even individual, there's a significant amount of market share. And by you being on the editorial publishing side, you're providing a service to people who just want either the language translation is key,
Mhm.
um, but also being able to provide data and a comfort feeling that is coming from you and also for your folks, your demographic. And so that's a
Mhm.
huge compliment of what you've been able to do, man. That's awesome.
No, thank you. It was, we're here at our project. Our main focus is to be able to help the Hispanic community and being able to understand, um, you know, what is basically one of their largest purchases in their life, right? So we want to help them understand how, what is the best vehicle to get to, how to get it, and be able to understand, what happens when you go into a dealership. Understand credit, understand finances, understand all the things that are needed to do that. And we're here to help the Hispanic community do that, and we do that through the way Hispanics consume media. And one of the ways is national television. So we air a segment every Friday at 7:20 in the morning on Hoy Dia on Telemundo. We have a small little capsule that of our it's called Aventuras Automotrices, which is automotive adventures, and we do a little segment there, and then also on social and digital, which is autoproyecto.com. Now our biggest challenge has been is how to not just we're educating, helping to educate the Hispanic community, but also to educate our peers in the automotive community, as on a tier one level, being the manufacturers, and letting them be aware of the importance of uh, the minorities that they have. Because when we look at the sales data that shows, all we got to do is look at the census, right? The census says Hispanics are, X, blacks are X, Asians are X, and it's the only growth that we have,
That's right.
out of in the U.S. is Hispanic, Black, Asian.
That's
It's
right.
the only segments of the population that are growing. Why? Because they're having babies, right? And if we look at economics, we know that you need to have babies to improve the economy. It's
Right.
just simple science, right? Uh, but what happens is that the white population, the general population, is declining,
Mhm.
right? So if we look at automotive sales as any company, you can pick any company, it's almost going to mimic the census, right?
You're 100% right. Yeah.
So it just makes sense. And I was just in a presentation earlier last week that I think it's, as you said, I think it's like 40%, huge
Yeah.
number, right? 25% is for Hispanics, right? But yet, less than 5% of companies actually market towards Hispanic or connect with them culturally.
Is that it really even today with is it
Less than 5%. And that was a recent study done by Nielsen and uh, earlier this year. So that's a recent study.
So do
And
you think is it a lack of wanting to, or don't have the infrastructure of people to help facilitate that? Why do you see that? I have an idea on the auto
Mhm.
side, but why do you see that? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think I think what's happening is that almost like we kind of want to do like a set it and forget it, right? We don't want to take the time and work to do things the way things are supposed to be done, right? So there's a lot of manufacturers say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to market towards Hispanics, and I'm going to do it by buying programmatically. And then I ask them, okay, well, where are you buying your programmatic advertising? Well, I'm buying my programmatic advertising on cars.com or Auto Trader. And I'm like, well, and you're reaching Hispanics that way? They're like, yeah, because we get the data. But what is the difference between that buy and a regular buy that you're doing with cars.com? You're going to tell me you're going to segment this thing out through, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's kind of like this ideology of, okay, I'm going to use the same tactic that I use for the general market, and I'm going to apply it to Hispanics, but it doesn't work that way
It doesn't
because
work that way.
Hispanics, Blacks, Asian, they're their own race. They consume media all in different ways, and you can't just do it like that, right? So what we see is that the companies that connect with Hispanics on a cultural level, culturally, then the sales will increase,
Its sales will
right?
increase.
So when you connect with Hispanics culturally, then the sales will increase. And the data shows it. The same study said that the Hispanics, when they felt culturally connected, they were 86% more prone to buying that product. And I think it was something another like 77% said that it was important. Language was a huge factor. So it's
That's
it's
right.
you got to figure out which way to go. So do I do it in English? Do I do it in Spanish? But you got to connect in a way that's culturally, and that
Yeah.
I think I believe that that's been kind of our success at Auto Proyecto is that we connect culturally with our users and our TV audience, and we always bring something that kind of brings that together, right? And that's the
Yeah.
only way that we see success with connecting with the Hispanic market. And there was just an article that
Yeah.
came out in Ad Age talking about the same thing. You
Yeah,
know,
so there's a total market is what they're calling it now. So some companies think that total market advertising, um, by using their general marketing company, is a better way or better vehicle by way of communicating to different races and ethnicities, right? So you'll start to see these commercials now. They may have a Hispanic lady, African American male, and a biracial kid. You're starting to see them, and so when we even within NAMAD, we've had discussions with some of the manufacturers about you have to you we suggest that having a dedicated advertising agency that's minority by segment shows the value that there you will increase your market share because they know how to communicate to those respective segments, i.e. Univision and most of the Hispanic community when they're at home, they typically watch Hispanic channels with the language.
correct.
And if you're not doing that, and you're trying to show a general to or total market commercial, may show the car, but doesn't show the value.
Right.
And what you're touching on is something we've been talking about for years because it's very important to have those Hispanic ad agencies, the African American ones, the Asian ones, and even the Native American ones to have them to help measure and quantify those segments for your ad dollars to the quantifying of the dollars to the consumer base. And so you're dead on with that, dead on.
The thing is that even though we know that these minorities are the ones that are actually purchasing the vehicles, it's actually 2% of ad budgets are actually allocated to this area. So if this is the sales, if these are the sales numbers with 2% of your budget, imagine if you pop that over to 10% or 15%. You know, it's I was just at a meeting with an advertising agency a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me how the sales are down, and they actually blamed the client. And uh, in my mind, I was thinking, I'm like, you're not going to really have this client for much longer, And sure enough, it showed up in automotive news that this agency is now under review, right? But the fact is that if you were to allocate these budgets to the demographics, which they know of, are purchasing the vehicles, then your sales are going to increase. It's just that simple.
That's right.
But yet it's not happening,
Yeah.
right? So this is I almost find it in a way. It's like everybody says, "Oh, I wish I would have bought Amazon when it was $50 or $25, or I wish I would have bought Coke when it was a quarter or something." That's what you have the data right now to do that,
That's right.
right? And if you invest into these different demographics, you're gonna do it, but you have to do it correctly, and that's where I think that a lot of companies will prosper if they're able to do so.
And they have to also, but they also want to. They have to want to do it. And some of the issues is that they don't have a person of color or race within those CEO or C-suite
Yes,
seats, offices, to help bridge that communication gap on explaining the why, right? And that's we need to make sure that all of our leaders and leaderships, whether it's C-suite level or senior level management, that too also mirrors America, and that has to be a little different in using the data for consumers because we know that that data is shows and quantifies the fact or the ideal. The same needs to take place within corporate America as well. I knew my light was going to go out. The corporate America as well, because you have to be able to have people to be able to communicate and articulate the why,
exactly.
and advocate for it. More importantly, because we have to get in those rooms. It's so true.
What's more shocking to me is how a lot of the corporate America is now saying, okay, we don't need this DEI, right? And they're getting rid of it. I think Ford just announced that they got rid of their DEI department, right? So it's very, I don't understand, how companies need to, want to increase, and they want to increase sales, and they want to connect when they're not putting, as you said, they have to want it. They got to want to be there. They have to want and have that desire. And the jobs, I mean, we see very, very, very few people people of color that are in these major roles. In fact, we published an article. We've been doing a lot more market insights on Autoproyecto. If you go to sales.autoproyecto.com, there's a link. In the menu, it's something called resources, and if you click on that, you'll get a bunch of articles that are towards the Hispanic market and stuff. And one of those articles is about advertising agencies, how people of color aren't, in the major decision roles, right? So if they're not in major decision roles, and you start to think about it, it's in every single company, not just the agencies.
Right.
It's not just on Madison Avenue, right? So it's all across all the companies. I mean, we're very, very rare. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've walked into a Hispanic advertising agency, and not a single person spoke Spanish, right? And
I
it's
was going to
because
ask you that.
yes,
How many Hispanic ad agencies are there? Now I know of a couple, but how? But to your
well,
point, they may not be
that's
Spanish speaking ad agencies. Yeah,
that's a very, very, very good question. I don't know the exact number, but there isn't like there's a plethora of them either. It's not like there's so many, but there's a few. But the thing is that a lot of uh, manufacturers and a lot of companies, what they do is they have an agency of their agency of record, which could be a huge, like a PhD, one of these huge, huge agencies, and within that agency, they have a multicultural department.
right.
But is that really connecting with, multiculturally? Like you said, to your point, you want to be with an agency that if you're going to hit the Hispanic market, hit a minority-owned Hispanic agency that really knows how to connect. There's got to be there's a better way. You can't just take the short route and say, okay, And it's very smart. It's the same. It's the same concept of buying the programmatic on cars.com for Hispanic, right? It's the same concept. You're not doing
Right.
your, you're not, you're just taking
Right.
the easy route per
It
se.
takes an easy route, right? You're 100% right, man. I would say when you've seen the evolution from a paper print ads to kind of a hybrid. Then it became real popular with TV. Then now it's kind of transitioning to a hybrid of TV and digital, and also websites. I would say. How do you see it transitioning from? Do you see it transitioning from TV to streaming,
Oh
or
yes, of course. Yeah.
and so mean streaming like the YouTubes and the Netflixes of the world? Do
Mhm.
you see that's like the next big thing on how to do a marketing push to consumers, or is it still traditional TV where your traditional news channel?
Excellent question. So we have to see how, I can't speak to other demographics because I don't have all that information. But if we look at, for example, for Hispanics, the way they consume media, right? And that's really how we need to understand the best way to reach them. So the best way, the way they consume media right now is they do a tremendous amount of streaming. The question is, on what device are they doing the streaming? Are they doing it on the mobile? Are they doing it on, using the television? Are they doing it on their laptop? It's probably, it's all of the above, obviously, but which one is more? But definitely streaming, digital products, social. Social is a tremendous, tremendous factor. And I've become more and more aware that that's one of the things that lack with dealers, that they don't have like a Hispanic social program, to bring in
Right.
that Hispanic consumer through social, and to create a program to do that. Also, you know, obviously TV is always very powerful, but you kind of want to have it across the board, right? And we always want to analyze the way Hispanics, consume media, and that's what we here at Alto Proyecto. If we are on all of those, right? So we hit the national TV. We're also on streaming because we have our apps on Apple TV, and also through the partnership, um, you know, with Amazon, and we also are on, I believe, on Roku. So, and then also digital platforms. I think it's I don't know how this works, but we only have like for example on Instagram, I think we only have like 50,000 followers, but yet we reach 8 million accounts. Right, and each time because of the engagement, the continuous engagement, and reposting and moving it over. So it's basically having to understand how do this demographic consume media, right? And then allocating resources towards it.
Do you also provide reviews?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You
Yeah.
do.
So
You
we
do.
have a full-time editor in chief. His name is Marcos. We're very heavy on video. So basically, we're kind of like I don't like to compare, but it's almost like a road and track, like or a motor trend, but in Spanish, right? And we're really the only ones that are in this space.
Man, that is awesome. So I'm going to. You touched on something about companies removing themselves or separating themselves from DEI initiatives, and I have to touch it with you. It's very disappointing um, to see that when there is not parity across the board, that outside pressures um, make them change their viewpoint. And for us at NAMED, I can speak with Ford. We've had a good conversation with Ford, and it was definitely disappointing to see when the letter was leaked out. Um, but Ford, for example, never had a quota anyway, so that was just knowledge that we knew.
Mhm.
But their commitment for, I would say, for the dealer body remains intact. But it doesn't give a good optic to the public when you
No.
see things like that, even though we understand, that the commitments are there. And so it's very important for us and entities like you and others that we really have to start to speak with of a larger voice, unified on the why. And
Right.
it may not be the why because it's it's because it's the next big thing. But the why is growth, and diversity is growth. The why is data. The why
Yep.
is market share. The why is you should want to do this in order to capture it, because if you don't, someone else will. And so, what publications, what you're doing and providing that information to your community in their language is huge, because you're their trusting source.
Mhm.
You're their trusting source. And I think that for all of us, because we're all in this together, no one's better than the other. But when we're working together, kind of say that, like forming Voltron together, right? It things we are a powerful force together.
Yep.
We're also a powerful force separate, but the voice is unified, that we're locked at arms, shows that, we're not going away. We're going to continuously grow. Not just you and I saying it, but data is saying it. The census tract is saying it. So
Yep.
why you should want to embrace it versus going away. If you don't like the word or the term DEI, then come up with something that's embracive and all inclusive, because
Right.
you need the diversity in order to be inclusive. And some companies are now, this is the new big thing, like they want to remove the D and the E, and they want to say we're inclusive, but it don't work without the D and the E. So but so it's
I did
like,
not know that. That's a good.
but it all works. That's why you got the D, the E, and the I, right? So it's just that's why it has to be in that order. But I think we all need to come together as media platforms and ad agency platforms, advocacy groups, um, at all, and now just to tell our story, not to be preachy, but here is the data, and this is what we are. We are diversity. We
Yes.
represent a dealer body. We represent consumers, and all of those things do match and marry a beautiful and make a beautiful, beautiful flower. But I love what you're doing. I'm
Thank
going
you.
to I have to we're running close to time, but I really
Yes.
want to touch on Camilo. How do you see the future of marketing? Do you see it being more is the language barrier going to ever go away, or do you see it always being a force to be reckoned with?
Damon, you got all the great questions.
My light keep
You
going
you
off
got
though.
all the great questions. You're getting me. You're getting me good on it. Well, how do I see it? I think that once again, I think that if to your point where you're saying, if companies start to embrace, if they start to embrace it, that's when they'll see growth, right? But if they continue to be on the same path as before, it's not going to happen. They have to pivot and make adjustments on the way they market. And I think that they really need to understand who is their consumer, right? Who is their buyer? Who are they really going for? It's not the same as it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 25 years ago. And what I see is a lot of these marketing plans are still going towards that. In fact, I was just at a summit not too long ago, and the plans that they had, you know, the outcome, we know what the outcome is, but you got to adjust the plans to be able to get that to that outcome, right?
Right.
And if they, I think that if companies were to adjust that and say, okay, I need to pivot from what I've been doing for so long, then they will see, a tremendous amount of growth. And you can't. I don't think it's fair to say, okay, I don't think going back to my example previously on this agency that I spoke to, you can't just blame the client. You got to pivot your message, your strategy, to get to the sales, and they will. If they do that, they will prosper.
Oh man, well, thank you. That's an awesome way to close, my friend. And hey, diversity equals growth, and
It,
that's at the bottom line. That's what it is. And
it is,
yeah,
and the numbers say it. The numbers say it, right? So the data says it. The number says it. You just if you read it, you read the research. It's there. So,
That's right.
but you gotta embrace it.
Yeah. Well, Camilo, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. I got
Oh,
to
thank
wrap,
you.
but hey, thank you. You're an awesome, awesome man. Awesome
Oh, you
company,
too. Thank you so much. Are you
and
kidding? This was amazing, and thank you
yeah,
for setting this up. I don't do too many of these, so it was a great experience, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you
and
so
thank you
much.
for trusting us to do this. If you don't do that many, and hey, your home is NAMAD, and anything that you need
Oh,
from us, man, you please let us know, and we got your back.
likewise, I'm looking forward, for next year. The way I was kind of like on the run, but when I was there, I was just so impressed by this organization that I was like, I need to talk to everybody. I need to create a video. We need to create more awareness on the on NAMAD, and it was so incredible. And I was just so impressed by the organization. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's just really incredible what you guys are doing over there.
But thank you. We really appreciate it, man. And please do another promo of your company and your .com. I don't want to spell it out for them. So if you can do it for everyone on the screen, I appreciate it.
Yes, of course. I'm Camilo Alfaro. I'm CEO and founder of autoproyecto.com. And please, anything that has to do with Hispanic market, we're here to help. So anything that we can do, help, advise, or, anything that we can do, we're here to help.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Take care.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Now We're Here. Make sure you follow the show and share this episode with a friend. Stay tuned for more episodes as we shine spotlights on the leaders who are not just keeping up with the industry, but driving it forward.